The hosts feel it would be a little unkind to present this podcast without just a word of friendly warning. We are about to unfold the story of Frankenstein, a man of science who sought to create a man after his own image without reckoning upon God. It is one of the strangest tales ever told. It deals with the two great mysteries of creation, life and death. I think it will thrill you. It may shock you. It might even horrify you. So if any of you feel that you do not care to subject your nerves to such a strain, now's your chance to. Well, we've warned you. Hello, and welcome to episode 69 of the Frankencast. I'm the mad scientist, Anthony Bowman. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm joined as always by...
the little kid that has that gun that's actually a jackhammer in disguise, that is Eric Velasquez. My pronouns are also he, him. Did you ever have one of those? The little, they're like little blasters. I got mine at like a Dollar General.
Yeah.
But it went dig, 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 dig.
Yeah.
Man.
Oh, yeah.
Late 80s / early 90s. What a time to be alive.
Right.
Speaking of late 80s, early 90s, we're talking about Frankenstein 2000.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. I almost said Dracula 2000. That's a whole different animal.
Oh, yeah. Wow. And, I think this, we often talk about, what counts as a Frankenstein movie and what doesn't. This might be one of the least Frankenstein-y Frankenstein movies we've watched, even though the word Frankenstein is in the title.
Man, but they try to shoehorn it into every segment.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not any vignettes or anything, but it's like, no, this is a Frankenstein movie. Really, it's Friday the 13th, Part 7.
Yeah, it's like a little bit of that. It's like a little Silent Night, Deadly Night 3.
Yeah. A little bit of The Crow. Or Last House on the Left, I guess, to a degree.
Yeah, it's a strange. I guess speaking of, so we should say, as far as this is 3 for 3 in
SA trilogy, baby.
Yeah. So be warned, this is more or less you could consider it like a rape revenge movie. Yeah. So the revenge requires so be warned that there's definitely some rough moments earlier on.
Yeah, it's definitely is it the worst scene we've seen? It's pretty darn close, except for that one. What was it? Frankenstein 1990. That was probably that was the French one, right?
Yeah, 90 was the French one. 80 was the Italian one.
So 90 was probably the worst.
Yeah, and 90 was just so bad because it carried on. It wasn't just the moment. It was everything that happened after.
Exactly. And he tried to play it off like, oh, those goofs and laughs. Yeah.
Yeah, at least this one has the revenge that kind of redeems it, Yeah,
it's got a little bit of giallo in there, too.
Oh, yeah. This one, we start out, we're in Austria. We've got the credits are just shots of a European city, and then eventually you'll see some signs that indicate that we're in Austria.
Well, wait a second, Anthony. I thought we were actually watching Frankenstein 2000. This says Return from Death.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of a common thing with foreign horror movies, is they would try to remarket them. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure. I guess Return from Death must have been the original title since it's shown on the screen.
Right.
And then at some point it was remarketed as Frankenstein 2000.
Well, I think the original title was Ritorno della Morte because Italian.
Yeah.
But it's based on a story by Joan Russell, I believe.
Okay.
So I would like to get my hands on that actual, if that's an actual book somewhere. So
yeah, I'd be curious to see how it compares to this, what was changed along the way.
We'll find it one day and see if there's anything actually Frankenstein related, other than a guy with staples in his head.
Yeah. So we start out. We've got this kind of older guy. We'll eventually learn his name's Rick. Or actually, no. The first guy we see is not Rick. It's
Hoffner.
Yeah, the Hoffner that we don't find out his name until much later.
But yeah, he walks past a security guard, and the guard kind of like is like, "Hey, sir, like it's clear this guy's like important." And he goes into a building, and then that's when we see Rick carrying groceries, and he is kind of like accosted by a bunch of like punk teens on motorcycles.
Right, on their little Kawasaki's or whatever they are. Dirt bikes. And yeah, we have a cop, or I thought he was a cop. Apparently he's a security guard named, we'll find out his name, Paul. And like, he has his defining characteristic is he has a long braid. So I'm like, oh, this is like late 80s, early 90s. He's the main character. No, he is not. I'm glad they subvert that.
Yeah, so we'll end up finding out that like this town it's like a small town that relies on tourism, and they have a police force, but they also have a security guard force.
Right, that's sort of Hoffner.
Like, yeah, Hoffner is this rich guy who sort of like owns most of the town, and he kind of has his own private security firm that is also the police, and they're kind of like almost competing, or like the guards want to take care of everything so that the police don't know what's going on around town.
Right, because I feel like the police are actually a little bit beholden to maybe the state, whereas the guards are just beholden to Hoffner. And another thing, I do find it interesting. Every once in a while, you'll just hear just a random person be like, "Hey, listen, Mr. Hoffner is really nice for doing the bare minimum for the city," So it's almost like he's trying to develop his own little cult of personality. Yeah,
it definitely, it feels very familiar to the world we live in now with like, Bezos and Musk and stuff, where like you've got these little, you got like the Musk fans who like whatever he does, he can do no wrong. And, it's people, there's a certain stripe of people who like, they want to be fans of rich people in this like sort of deluded hope that they will become a rich person themselves one day.
Rich person by proxy or adjacency or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, which that's not going to happen. Get that out of your head.
Yeah.
They're rich because they don't give people money.
Exactly, yeah. But yeah, so in this case, we've got, like you said, there's a security guard. The teens knock all the groceries out of Rick's arms, and the guard kind of helps him pick them up. And he's pretty useless. Like he's like, oh, it's those kids, boys will be boys, basically.
Yeah. Oh no.
Yeah.
Don't take it too hard though.
And so Rick heads, kind of continues on his way. He gets to a house, and so this home, like it's Miss Danson.
Georgia Danson.
Georgia, yeah. And her son, Stefan. And then, so Rick is kind of like, sort of a handyman kind of person, sort of like takes care of them a little bit.
Well, a little bit handyman, babysitter, just general all-purpose, like, their guy.
Yeah. And in fact, so he arrives with the groceries, and she's like, okay, I've got to run to work. If you will, if you can watch Stefan for a little bit, the neighbors are going to come pick him up. They'll watch him later, but there's this little overlap where we need you to keep an eye on him.
Right, but here's another thing. Immediately you can tell the quality of this movie just by the voice acting or the dubbing of the actors. It ain't great.
No.
But the story is pretty compelling once we get there. But yeah, they will knock you out of it. Especially the worst offender, I think, is is it Grover or Grober?
Yeah, I think it's
Hans Gruber.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's just completely like monotone.
Right. It's an N accent. I think it's a German accent, probably by an actual German, but it still sounds like someone trying to do a German accent.
Right. But before Georgia can leave, Stefan he has like a ball he's playing with. It rolls out into the street, and it feels like it's going to be a Pet Cemetery moment here.
As a matter of fact, we see the kid get gabed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he runs out, and the motorcycle kids go by, and all of a sudden you see Stefan's head just flying through the air,
bouncing off the pavement. It is gratuitous how much it follows his noggin.
Yeah, but then it turns out that he's actually fine. And Georgia, it seems like she has some kind of nervous disorder or something. She keeps having sort of like visions of bad things happening.
Yeah. We'll learn that maybe they're not just necessarily like her in her mind, but maybe something else.
Yeah. And so then we cut to her at work, and so in her office, there's all these posters for horror movies on the wall, and like the camera just keeps like giving us close-ups of the posters, just like intercut throughout the scene.
Yeah, so we got the Clockwork Orange, we got Nosferatu, we got Friday the 13th, the final chapter. And I literally wrote down, so this movie knows about the better movies out there.
Yeah.
At least it knows. You know.
So there's two things that happen back to back here, and the first one confused me, and I'm not sure what. So she has like a big kind of calculator that she needs to plug into the wall. You know, it's one of like the big, ribbon printer ones. Yeah. And she like the way she plugs it in, she's like holding way out on the cord and like kind of balancing, trying to get the plug to go into the wall. And at first I was like, is this because she's afraid she's going to get shocked? Is this more like nervous behavior?
Right. Or does she have a really stiff cord?
Yeah. But so then the very next thing that happens is like she's got a bookshelf with a bunch of like big binders on it, and one of them slides out on its own.
Well, the very next thing that happens is we also get pictures or snapshots to Marilyn Monroe's poster, Freddy Krueger's poster, because once again it knows what's better, and another shot of the Nosferatu poster.
Right.
But then a binder just slides out of the bookshelf.
Yeah, so then we'll ultimately find out that she has some amount of like telepathy and can kind of move things with her mind occasionally. So was the plug thing also that? Was she holding the plug up with her mind? Or
it had to be, right? Because otherwise, there's no cord that's that stiff and just falls out of the wall.
Yeah, I was very confused.
But I was right there with you. I was like, what? Did she just like bounce that thing in, or is that telekinesis?
Yeah.
Turns out it is in fact telekinesis, Kyle.
Mm-hmm. And so then, as she's like, getting ready to like do some work, three guys in Halloween masks burst in and start kind of like menacing and intimidating her.
Right. Well, they're not just any Halloween mask. One, of course, because this movie does know there are better movies out there. One's a Freddy Krueger mask. Then we have a Dracula mask. And I guess, is it generic zombie, or is that Chatterer?
I think it was just like a generic, it may have been like, when you bought it at the Halloween store, it might have been a knockoff Hellraiser type mask, but
it was Inferno Lifter from the Spirit Halloween store.
Right, exactly. And so she's in there, and they're just kind of like, and there were three teens on motorcycles earlier. It doesn't take a lot. Yeah. And, they're just kind of like pushing her around, and it's like one of those moments where it's like, okay, we know that things are getting ready to get really bad here. Yeah. But we cut away, and Rick is outside. He's decided to drop in and check on her, but he's being slowed down.
The guard, right? The guard's like, hey, you need to come to my place and help me and my wife redesign our shelves in our kitchen. And it's like, well, that's weird. Why would you do that?
Yeah. But so he does end up getting inside and manages to kind of like scare these teens off before they do anything too terrible. Like I think they kind of groped her a little bit, pulled up her dress and stuff, but like she definitely, like if Rick hadn't shown up, things would have gotten a lot worse for sure.
Yeah, they definitely want her to quote unquote be easy, which that's fun. That's fun to hear.
Yeah.
Yep.
And pretty much from there we cut to Georgia and Rick at first I thought it was a police station, but no, again, this is the guards.
Yeah, and Paul or Paolo, depending on which version you're looking at, Braid Cop, as I like to call him, Braid Guard, I guess, is getting everybody coffee.
Yeah, and it's pretty much the worst example of what happens when an assault victim goes to the police. Like,
yeah, it was just a little prank.
Yeah, it was a harmless prank. Nothing really happened. They were probably drunk, and again, like boys will be boys kind of stuff. But they're like, no, we want to report this, and then they start kind of getting on like the offensive, and they're like, well, Rick, you could get into trouble. Did you hurt them? Like, you might be charged with assault for beating these guys up.
Right, you were an ex-boxer, right? I mean, you are a deadly weapon, so assault with a deadly weapon right there.
Yeah. And, Rick is even like, I know it was those same kids on the motorcycles earlier.
Right, well, the guards are like, well, are you sure? Because they were wearing masks. And then Paul was like, I'm not even sure that, they were on the bikes you described. So these guys are clearly on these assholes' side. They already know who it is.
Yeah, and, they're like, they were probably from out of town. Like, there's nothing we can do. They're probably gone now. Finally, they're like, if you go to the police, like this could affect, this town relies on tourism. You could, affect the local economy. They start kind of talking about Hoffner, like, he wants to keep things quiet. He runs this town. That's why he hired us. You don't want to get on his bad side, basically.
Right. But of course, Georgia is like, nope, we're going to the cops.
Yeah. And so they do end up leaving, and then the guards are like, or one of them's like, go tell those 3 idiots to lie low for a while. And it's like, okay, yeah, they definitely know these guys. They know who they are, and they're protecting them.
Yeah, little shits. Anyway, so then we cut to Georgia cuddling Stefan, and I think she's humming Rockabye Baby.
Yeah.
Some lullaby.
Yeah, she kind of like tucks him in for bed and then goes to have dinner. And she's with Thomas, who I believe is her boyfriend or fiance. Right,
because, well, we will learn that Stefan's real father was in an accident that Stefan witnessed.
Yeah, and at some point Thomas will talk about that he wants to get married, but they're not currently.
Right, but now Georgia, she wants to leave town because of all the trouble she's had.
Yeah, and she doesn't even, like, she just kind of like, I'm not happy here, like, I don't know anybody. And she never mentions the assault to him. I don't know if she, like, had already mentioned it before we joined the scene, or if she's, like, keeping that from him.
Right.
But we never hear her mention it. And she also does say stuff about, she talks about that she moved the folder with her mind.
Well, Thomas, being Thomas, Tom, is like, yeah, we need to, that could have just been an issue. We just need to up your meds a little bit. Okay.
Yeah. And so he's a doctor, right? Like and so I think she has another doctor that is like her actual doctor, but like Thomas kind of like is involved in her care in a way that
that breaks the ethics.
Yeah, not exactly the right way to go about that. And he's like, well, but we will be married soon. And for the most part, he's not like a shitty boyfriend. But this scene is kind of rough, where he's like, you need to just start controlling your emotions, relax. He kind of is downplaying her concerns.
Yeah, I felt like this is like, this is where they kind of bait the twist. Well, there really isn't a twist. I don't want to ruin that for you.
And then we see that Rick is outside, like kind of patrolling around the house. We see him like listening through the window, so like he hears some of this conversation.
Right, and that's when they do go into the fact that Stefan saw his father die, and that has affected him in some way that we really never get to experience at all.
Yeah, Stefan is like there's not really any reason for him to be in this movie.
There's one reason for him to be in this movie, and that's literally at the end.
Right, yeah. He mainly exists so that Georgia can be scared that he's going to get hurt, pretty much.
Right, yeah. That's pretty much it, yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of which...
in fact, yeah, I was going to say, the next scene is we see the sort of family, Thomas, Georgia, and Stefan.
Yeah, they're having a nice picnic on Camp Crystal Lake.
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah, there's like a lake or river kind of like off in the background through the trees, and they're sitting up at like a picnic table and everything. And then like Stefan is chasing, like he's running through the woods by himself with a ball, and George is kind of watching him in the distance. And then she suddenly sees there's just like a guy with an axe.
Not just an axe, sir, a battle axe. A two-headed battle axe.
Yeah, it's not your like normal wood chopping axe. It is very like anachronistic for this moment. Like, it does not fit in with this scene at all.
And he's just giddily running through the friggin' forest or whatever with this axe, just like swiping it around a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And then he catches up to Stefan and chops off his head. And again, his head goes flying through the air just like earlier.
And knocks over her berries that she was picking?
Yeah, she has this like basket of berries, and it like splats into the berries, sends them all rolling everywhere.
Well, I've got good news. It was just a dream.
Yeah. Yeah, so she wakes up screaming, and Thomas is there in bed next to her and like comforts her, and he's like, "Okay, we need to see Professor Gruber again."
Mm-hmm. He helped you once, and he'll do it again.
Yeah. And then we just cut to the family on the same picnic again at the same place, but this time for real.
Right.
It's very dreamy. It's very deja vu. Like we see Stefan running through the forest again.
Right. Well, and and she's like, "This is kind of weird." She opens up the picnic basket and sees the white tablecloth that she put in there, and she's like, "Oh no!"
But so in this case, instead of her collecting blackberries, she has like a pie with like a bunch of blackberries on top, or a cake or something.
Yeah.
Some kind of big whipped creamy dessert with a big pile of blueberries in the middle of it.
Right. And that's when she's like, "Oh shit." And then she sees Stefan running, chasing after his ball, and she's like, "Oh!" Yeah,
and then we see the guy again, the same guy, but instead of an axe, he's carrying a bumper?
A fender? Yeah, a bumper. Yeah.
Some car part, some large, like, long car part, and he's just running through the woods carrying this big bulky...
And also, you can't cut off a kid's head with a bumper. Yeah. Come on, man, get it together.
Yeah, and so then she suddenly again sees Stefan's head fly through the air, and it splats into her dessert of blueberries. But then we see it's actually
the ball.
Yeah, it's the ball, and the guy's like the guy pops out with Stefan, and it's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I scared you." And George is like crying and everything, and
he's like, "What? I just threw the ball back."
Yeah.
Hey, okay. Anyway.
Yeah. So she's clearly having some sort of premonitions, but they're either not accurate or there's definitely something going on here with like her mental state and what's going on in the world.
Boy, I really hope that pays off. Anyway, so we cut to Tom dropping them off, and I still am confused as to why that guy just had a fender.
Yeah, in the middle of the woods, like there's just no explanation for what's going on in that
running
scene.
All happy, all giddily with the whatever, man.
He's like, "Hey, I found this bumper in the woods. I needed one of these.
I'm gonna turn this into the dump for $5. All right."
Yeah, but so Georgia. So I think Thomas is going like out, like he's because they live together, but he's dropping them off and then running some errands.
Yeah.
But like George is definitely still kind of shaken up when they get in the house. She's kind of like, it's like that moment when you've like watched a scary movie and you're a little shaken up now and you're walking through the house a little tense, like
a little nervous.
Yeah, which she has reason to be because those masked punks are here.
Well, so is Rick with some flowers. Uh-oh, what's he doing? You think he's gonna propose or something? Try to step on Tom's shoes here?
Yeah, his relationship to them is kind of strange.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't matter because he gets bashed in the head with a baseball bat.
Yeah, yeah. So he's just left on the sidewalk outside the house.
Yeah.
And then so the masked teens come in, and then they remove their masks, which like
it's bad time.
Yeah. If you've got bad guys who are masked and suddenly they're willing to let you see their face, they don't expect that you're going to be able to be talking about what they look like. So definitely a bad sign.
Yeah.
And they start kind of intimidating her that, they're like, "We heard you tried to go to the cops." And she's like, "No, I talked to the guards. I didn't go to the cops." And she's like, "Yeah, but you were going to. You wanted to."
Yeah.
So they kind of like knock her down on the couch, and they're holding her down and everything. And one of the guys pretty much right away is like, "This is more than I was really signing up for. Like I'm out. Like I don't want any part of what's going on here."
I believe his name is Eric. So he is actually kind of standing up to these guys, but not really.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's just like, "Guys, stop, please. Stop, please."
Yeah, he's not going to take part, but he's not going to really try very hard to keep them from doing anything.
Yeah. Well, they're definitely not interested in stopping.
Yeah.
So at this moment, Stefan gets a call from Tom saying, "Hey, tell your mom I'm going to be there in a couple minutes."
Yeah. So he's like, okay. So, he's been in his room playing with his, like, toy laser gun, so he has no idea what's going on out in the living room. So he comes strolling out and sees, these two guys holding his mom down, like, pulling her dress up and everything.
Right. And without a beat, one of the guys just walks over and pimp slaps the crap out of the kid.
Yeah, like, knocks him, like, out of frame. Like, he just, like, knocks him down the hallway, basically.
Right. I thought he knocked him down some stairs for a second.
Yeah. It's, like, you don't really see where he go. I think his feet are still in the frame, so, like, he didn't fall down steps. But, yeah, right. It's a pretty brutal hit on, like, a, small kid.
Yeah, you know what else is in this screenshot, or in this shot now, though? It's a giant glass ashtray.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, those, it seems like those are just like a movie trope. Like, if you see a big-ass, heavy ashtray, it's like a Chekhov's ashtray.
Right, somebody's going to get brained with that ashtray. Well, unfortunately, it turns out this time it's Georgia.
Yeah. And so the Eric goes to leave, and one of the other ones kind of like tries to stop him, and they get in a kind of a scuffle.
Right, he slaps his contact lens out, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's like, "Oh no, I gotta my contact lens. I've got to find it." And he looks for a minute, and then just kind of gives up and leaves. And then bumps into, is it this ponytail guard again?
No, this is Mulder, I think.
Oh, the other guard. Yeah, bumps into him, and he's like, "You need to go in there. You got to stop them. They're gonna hurt her."
Right, and he just kind of tells Eric to fuck off. And he walks right over Rick's body. Just looks down like, whatever.
Yeah. And then we pretty much just cut to, like, a little later. We've got, like, a bunch of police cars out in front of the house, an ambulance, all the lights flashing and everything. We see Georgia being rolled out on a stretcher. She's in bad shape. But then we have the police escorting Rick in cuffs and putting him in the back of a police car.
Hey, that's not the guy who tried to do the bad stuff.
Yeah, so something, obviously as us realizing that the guards are sort of on the side of those kids.
Right, if we didn't know already.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious what's going on here. And, Thomas gets home around this time and, sees all this going on. And then we just cut to, like, later on to the hospital, and he's talking to one of the doctors.
Yeah, it turns out Stefan will be fine, but George is going to be in a coma from now on.
Yeah. They're hopefully she'll come out of it, but they don't really know anything yet. She's in a coma now, and seems like she will be for a while. But you're in luck because Hoffner is going to pay all of her bills.
Yeah, he's such a generous benefactor. This guy.
Yeah.
He has no ulterior motives at all.
Yeah, and then we immediately cut to Hoffner yelling at one of the punks, who is his son.
Hey. That's Kurt, I believe. Kurt Hoffner is the one of them. But apparently it turns out Hoffner has a whole backstory, man. Like, apparently his wife anyway, the kid's mom, whatever she was to him, basically ran off with her own little lover and just left Kurt for Hoffner to deal with.
Yeah, and so he's like, you need to
get lost
disappear for a few days. I'll get everything cleared up. You don't need to be around, though. And then we cut to the guards who are... So the guy that they're talking to, is he a cop or a judge? Because they kind of kept going back and forth at what I thought he was supposed to be.
That is a good question. But anyway, because I don't know either. Because they call him Your Honor, but he answers the phone as Stroll, just like Stroll.
Yeah.
So it's like, at the end he seems like a detective, but here he seems like a judge.
Yeah, that's because I started writing judge, and then as it went, I was like, he seems more like a cop. So yeah, I don't know. But regardless, basically, the guards are talking to him, and they're like, we pretty much caught Rick red-handed. He's definitely the guilty guy. Yeah,
what the coroner is basically like, yeah, his DNA was under her fingernails, and it was just dead to rights, man. It was Rick all the way.
Yeah. He's like, well, I want like a full autopsy. I want to know everything. I want all the details. Then we cut to Kurt Hoffner, who's now hiding out with, like, I think we find out she's his, like, ex-girlfriend that he's kind of, like, rekindling something with her, basically just to have a place to stay.
Yeah, basically. He's a scumbag. But no, for a moment there, I was like, is that his mom? She seems a little bit older than he is. And
I thought so too.
Then she's wearing lingerie, and I'm like, oh, that better not be his mom, but this is going to get real weird real quick.
Yeah, there's a moment where she kind of he's sitting down, and she stands up next to him and kind of like, cradles his head to her chest, and, like you said, she's in lingerie, and I was like, I'm not sure what this relationship is, but it's hopefully a girlfriend.
Right. I mean, listen, this was, what, an 80s or early 90s Italian/Austrian film? Who knows?
Yeah. And so then we see Hoffner giving the guards bonus money for their clever frame job.
Right, basically hush money for... It's like, hey, you did good, kids.
Yeah. And they're like, well, we're kind of worried because the judge is like really on top of things. He wants a psych eval on Rick. So right now he's like stunned and not speaking. So we're safe so far. But, if he starts to come out of it and starts talking, we don't know what's going to happen. Well,
Hoffner's like, yeah, you'll take care of this, won't you? And they're all like, what? What do you mean? I mean, it's already kind of wrapped up, man. He's like, no, not permanently, it's not.
Yeah. So they like head out, and they're talking. The two guards are talking to each other, and they're like, so he wants us to kill Rick, right? Is that what he was saying? And they're like, yeah. And I don't know if I'm down with that. Yeah. Like that's a line.
Mulder is not in on this. He's like, this is a line too far. But Paul's like, you're gonna tell him no. You're gonna tell Hoffner no.
Yeah, Mulder's like, you're right. Like, we don't really have a choice.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, sorry to step back. I do love the way that the actors phrase this, that Hoffner put Mulder in charge because you have balls.
Right.
I don't know what accent he was going for. It almost sounds like they were mixing Italian and German together. It's so amazing. I put you head of my security because you have balls. I don't know. All right. I just thought that was funny.
Yeah, it was good. But yeah, so then we get back to the hospital. The doctors are talking about Georgia's progress. Her brain is showing signs of activity that usually you wouldn't see out of a coma patient, but she still is in a coma.
Yeah. She's got a lot of secondary reactive waves, whatever that means.
Yeah, it feels like this is a lot of just like made up stuff to like sound, scientific.
Right.
But yeah, basically, because they say like we're gonna need to shock her awake before the coma sets in.
Right. That's not how that works at all.
Yeah. And at first I thought they meant like literally shocking her, but no, they're gonna try to like scare her while she's in a coma and cause her to wake up.
Yeah.
And the way they're gonna do
her.
Yeah, and the way they're gonna do that is they think Rick is the guy who like assaulted her, so they're gonna bring Rick in.
Yeah, let's have some trauma.
Yeah, which thankfully he's not the person, but like
they don't know that.
But there's a weird moment as they're bringing Rick in. He sees Thomas and kind of like tries to attack Thomas for a second. And
yeah, I'm gonna chalk that up to jealousy, or at least that was the intention.
Yeah, and I think maybe the idea is that Rick is kind of in a weird state from his like injury as well. Like he's not all there, so he may be a little bit more like his subconscious or whatever is acting out a little bit there.
Yeah, we'll never know.
Yeah.
I mean, not really.
Yeah, so they like
set up for a scene later in the movie.
Yeah, pretty much. So they set him down next to her, and they're like, talk to her. We want to try to jar her out of the coma, which I don't know why they would think he'd want to cooperate if they think he's the bad guy here.
Right.
But at first, he keeps saying, like, my head hurts, my head hurts. Like, clearly he's in bad shape from getting hit with the bat.
Yeah, he's got a little bit of the brain damage.
Yeah. Well, finally, he does say, I'm very fond of Stefan and Georgia. So he does talk a little bit, but, there's no really, no change with Georgia at all.
By the way, did you catch the name of the clinic whenever we see Tom outside smoking?
I don't think so.
It's called Reanimation.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I did see that. Yeah.
They've seen other better movies than this.
Right. And so then we cut to, like, just they're continuing experiments. Now they've got Rick and Georgia connected to each other with electrodes or something.
Yeah. Their brains are connected somehow.
Yeah.
Science.
Right. And then he starts saying that he loves her, and suddenly they just both have seizures at the same time.
Right. It's really weird. It's like their brains are syncing up or something.
So then it's like they kind of put a stop to things at that point, and then we just see later on that night Georgia is by her, or she's in her room alone, and in the dark, and like there's a nurse in there with her, and like some machine starts dinging. Basically, it's like it sounds like a heart monitor, but I think it's some kind of brainwave. Yeah, but it's like it has like a steady beep that starts getting faster and faster all of a sudden.
Right, and then it seems like, okay, she's convulsing. Now so is Rick. So they're kind of, even though they're in different places now, they're kind of still sunk up.
Yeah. And suddenly, like, her eyes open, and then we see that he sits up. When he sits up, like, the monitor in her room calms down to, like, the steady beep again.
Yeah, but also that you could tell that they've seen a better, like, sci-fi TV shows, because he has half of his face green like the Incredible Hulk from the 80s as well. I'm just saying.
Yeah, that seems like a pretty accurate comparison to what goes on in this.
I really feel like the people that made this were like big fans of American pop culture, and they're like, we're gonna do all of it. We're gonna do everything.
Yeah, all those posters early on, like it shows like we're gonna be nodding to everything we can get our hands on.
Oh yeah, 100%. Especially Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, and Nosferatu to a lesser degree.
Yeah, and so then we cut away to the police station where the two guards have shown up, Paul and Mulder. And is it Mulder distracting the guy?
Yeah, Mulder distracts Gunther. He's like, hey, can I get a cigarette from you in exchange for my brandy-filled coffee?
And he's like, I guess, at first I thought he was a guard, but he's just like a janitor, but I guess he's just like the only guy who's around.
Right.
And so they don't want it, so while they're having this chat, Paul is like, you see him in the background go, and he gets a key out of a little box thing and like heads into the jail.
Right. I do love when he walks into the room, Rick stands up and he's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. He's like, hey, don't worry. We're just going to make it easier this way. How do you like to smell my chloroform rag? And he just shoves it right in his face.
Yeah. And then Rick goes down, and then we see Paul gets his bed sheet and starts wrapping it up. And so
he makes a bed sheet necktie. Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, should we note that in the show notes? But
yeah, I guess that is, it's not suicide, but the appearance of it's an unpleasant jailhouse murder, which those aren't not great.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of murders. Many are graphic, so just know what you're in for.
Yeah, and so then we see Paul leaving, and then. As soon as he's walking out, Mulder's like, "Oh, I gotta go. See you. Good to talk to you, Gunther." And just pieces out mid conversation, basically.
Right. Gunther's still trying to talk about the whatever local match they're having tomorrow.
Yeah. And so then we get the guards calling Hoffner to be like, everything's good. We took care of it. He's not gonna say anything now.
Right. And Hoffner's like, yeah. Our special friend here is going to be happy to hear that. Why? Who is this guy? We never see him ever again or hear about him. Who is this guy?
Yeah, no idea.
You think he's going to be the real true big bad. He's nobody.
Yeah.
Who is he? Nobody.
Yeah, I almost thought he was the coroner guy, but he's because they kind of look similar, but it's not. It's just some other dude.
No, just some dude.
But so then we see the janitor finds Rick dead, and then we also see that, at the hospital, George's monitors are going crazy again.
Right. Now, here's the thing. They start panning down to the shoes, so I'm like, oh, is she somehow keeping him up? Is she no, she's not keeping him up. That was wishful thinking on my part.
Yeah. And then we get this brief scene where Thomas has gone back to the house and instantly finds the contact. Doesn't even know that he's I feel like if you drop a contact, even if you know that you did, it's almost impossible to find. And then Thomas doesn't even know there's a contact in the mix here and just, like, happens to find it instantly.
Yeah, Chekhov's contact, you know?
Right. And then he looks out the window right after that and sees that there's somebody out there trying to, like, get through their gate.
Right. I wonder if that's the guy who has the had the contact.
He really wants that contact.
I mean, really. Right? Who the hell would go back for that thing? I mean, I guess it makes sense to a degree, but I feel like the technology at the time wasn't that good.
Yeah, I don't think they were going to be getting his DNA off a contact lens.
It's like random contact lens, who knows?
We cut to the morgue where we've got the coroner again, and he's telling the judge/cop guy that, you know, this is an open and shut case at this point. Like, clearly Rick knew he'd done wrong, he killed himself, you know, we don't have to do anything now. It's, you know, off the books, basically.
It's all nice and tied up. Yep. We even know because we checked his cerebral fluid and he's deader than a doornail, baby.
Yeah. And the judge is like, dig in, you know, I want an autopsy. I want to know what's going on. Like, something doesn't feel right about all this.
Yeah, and by the way, that's where Rick will get his handy-dandy Frankenstein scar.
Right,
from that autopsy.
Yeah, so then while that's going on, we get George's monitors going, going wild again. There's also lights are flickering. It's storming outside. This is our Frankenstein scene, basically.
Right.
So we see the storm, we see the lightning, and then we see Rick's hand move on the morgue slab.
And then we see George's eyes open in unison with Rick's, and he stands up. Dun, dun, dun. He's revived.
Yeah, and like you said, he's got this huge cut across the center of his forehead that's like stapled shut. It's the Frankenstein looking thing. Like, it's very traditional big bolt staples, you know.
Right. As a matter of fact, all right, so here in a second we're going to see Rick step out, and I'm like, holy shit, he's wearing the whole costume. Because he's got the jacket and like a gray sweater underneath, and like the pants with the platform shoes. It's like, he knew. He was already prepared.
Dress for the job you want.
Yes. Amazing.
And so he goes like walking down the hall and sees the coroner and just crushes his head.
Sneaks up like a ninja. He just pops that bad boy.
Yeah, and like the head crush here is pretty great. Like, it's pretty silly, but it's a really fun one.
It really is like Friday the 13th Part 3.
Yeah,
with the head crush with the eyes popping out.
Yeah,
come on, man. They knew what they were doing.
Yeah. And so then back at the house, the kid who lost the contact lens does end up getting into the house, and Thomas catches him, like he's like hiding, you know, and grabs him as he comes in. And he's like, "What did you have to do with all this?" Right.
Well, Tom knew what was up because Eric is not good at breaking in. He's very bad at it.
Yeah, and Eric is like, it's kind of helpful to everybody else, but he's just completely a coward about it. Right. Like he's like, I swear I didn't have anything to do with it, but here's my friends' names, here's their current locations.
Kurt Hoffner and Hans, I think they changed his name to Lecter, but it sounds like Letcher, and I'm like, that's the perfect name.
Yeah.
Nailed it.
Yeah. Yeah, and so Hans is supposedly at like a big costume party, and Kurt is out with his staying with his girlfriend. Right,
and Eric escapes by smacking Tom in the balls and runs off.
Yeah.
Speaking of costume party, what a hell of a party this one is.
What the fuck is going on?
It's a Nazi party, baby. Gosh, dang it.
Yeah, and this, so like, I know that there was a thing in like the late 70s through the 80s of like punk scenes kind of like using Nazi imagery as like an edgy thing, but I didn't think that was as much of a thing by the 90s.
Right. I would hope not, but
It's weird. So it's a costume party, but so the costumes are, the girls are dressed in Halloween costumes. Like one's like, there's a girl who's like a giant clock. They're just in kind of silly costumes. The guys are all just in leather jackets and sunglasses.
Right, they're like greasers almost.
Yeah, they're all too cool to like really get into a costume.
Right. And then of course we have some SS agents that I think are supposed to be security guards.
Yeah, and then there's just huge swastika banners everywhere. In the background. I guess it has to be this, because like there's no real discussion of any sort of like Nazi like ideology here or anything. I think it's just like it's an edgy,
they do have pictures
weird...
of Hitler, and some dude I think is reading Mein Kampf.
Oh, okay. I didn't see the book, but yeah, it's strange, yeah, because it's like, I know it used to be like, you know, there would be like punks who were like anti-racist, and they would have like SS emblems on their leather jackets because they look cool. They're all pointy and lightning bolt like. I get it, you know, like Nazis did it. Yeah, kids are dumb, and Nazis have like edgy looking stuff because they wanted to look scary, and kids like, you know, that's why everybody likes Darth Vader instead of, you know, Luke Skywalker,
because they're also kids and dumb. So, yeah.
Yep. So, but yeah, either way, so we get this. We're at this party, and then Rick just comes strolling in casually,
and some random chuckle fuck just says, "That's a badass Frankenstein costume, man."
Yeah. He says like, "Great costume, motherfucker."
Right? I'm sorry. Yeah,
you look
I used
like
the wrong expletive. Yeah, you look just like Frankenstein. What the hell? Sure, why not?
And Rick just like ignores everyone and just goes straight over to Hans and just immediately chokes him to death.
Right, Hans, who is hassling the clock girl.
Yeah,
she's like, I don't want to be involved.
Yeah, and so then we get the guards of the party calling like our two main guards, and you know, they're like, this kid got killed at the party, there was this big guy, and like it sounds, they were describing Rick, like everybody at the party. Yeah, all the descriptions we got from all these teens, it's Rick, and they're like, but Rick's dead, and he's like, well, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. That's what we got. And then we get Thomas talking to that judge cop.
It's the judge cop.
Basically, like, so you know, I caught this kid in the house, and this is what he told me. You know, that he knows who did it and everything. And then it's like, but why did Rick kill himself then?
Right.
You know, if he didn't have anything to do with it, why did he kill himself?
That was Stroll's counter argument.
Yeah. But then Stroll gets a call at that point about the murder at the party, and that Rick was ID'd as the killer. And so he's like, okay, something's not adding up here. There's some weird shit going on.
Yeah, I really hope Strolls gets to actually do something really cool in the finale. Anyway.
So yeah, then we get Paul and Mulder again, and they're talking, and they're kind of like, we're probably next. Like, something's going on, and the people who are, you know, the bad guys here are getting taken out one by one.
Well, Mulder, yeah, it's very like RoboCop / The Crow, right? Mulder's like, nope, he's back from the dead. And Paul's like, dude, that's dumb. What you're saying is dumb.
Yeah. Yeah, they call Hoffner and report the murder, you know, of the Hans, and they're like, something, you know, do you think, could it be Rick? Could he be back? What's going on? And Hoffner, he's in bed at this point, and he's got like a naked woman next to him, and he's like, go fuck yourself. Right. And just hangs up. He's like not interested in this conversation at all.
He's got more important things to handle here in a moment.
Yeah. So they're like, all right, well, we got to try to track down Rick, because or Rick, or the person who looks like Rick, but somebody is knocking people off, and we need to put a stop to it.
Right, exactly. They got the coroner first, and now Hans. People who are involved in the cover-up.
Yeah, and so then we see Thomas. He's sitting at George's bedside, and her lights start to flicker again.
Right. I do like how that when that happens, the nurse just busts in and is like, the lights went out again. It's like, yeah, he knows. He was right there.
Yeah. And then we see at Hoffner's house, the girl in bed with him gets up and gets dressed, you know, to leave.
I don't know who's extorting who, but somebody is.
Yeah, this feels like sugar daddy kind of situation for sure.
Right, Because she's like, hey, my mom wants me home, so who knows how old she is, and I don't want to ask. And then he's like, well, tell her to stop bothering us while we're doing it, or I'm going to take away her loan. And she suggests, hey, maybe you give her another loan, and that'll make her feel better, soften her up a bit. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't think you understand who Hoffner is, ma'am.
Right. But yeah, once she leaves, he hears a sound and like grabs a gun and starts looking around the house.
Right, like a 45 that was just chilling on his bar.
Yeah. And then he sees Rick walking towards the house.
Right.
And he just instantly just like empties the clip into him, just like fills him with bullets, and it doesn't do anything. It doesn't stop him at all.
Well, Rick has a neat trick to show him. He just reaches into the earth and pulls out a bunch of electrical wire, and just like Indiana Jones, that's around Hoffner. Hell of a way to go. By the way, this was the moment I'm like, okay, I'm in. Whatever this movie's got, I'm here for it now.
Yeah, I've definitely never seen a moment like that in any other movie. So yeah, when a movie can surprise you, still, it's pretty great.
Yep.
But yeah, so he gets electrocuted to death through this wire that he's pulled out of the ground.
Yep.
And then we see Thomas. He is in the car with Dr. Gruber, and he's like, so, Georgia told me all this stuff a while ago that she might like have psychic powers or something, but I didn't really believe her, and now I'm starting to wonder if maybe she was onto something.
Right, exactly. So Grover's like, okay, well, that would be an exciting find.
Yeah, he's like, okay, yeah, that, I don't know, let's go, go see her, let's figure out what's going on.
Right.
And then at that point, we go back to the guards, and they're like, continuing to discuss stuff, and they're like, maybe we should go see Stroll, like, maybe it's time that we get somebody else involved in this.
Well, Paul's not too worried about this Rick nonsense, because he has his handy-dandy shotgun right beside him. And he trusts that toy over anything else.
Yeah. But then they see Rick walking towards them, carrying an entire electrical pole that he's yanked out of the ground.
Right. It's very... I don't know if they meant for it to be evocative of, like, Jesus Christ carrying a cross, but it felt that way, right?
Yeah, kind of. And because it's like... It's one of, like, the big metal ones, like, what, like, light, usually, like, street lights are attached to. It's a huge-ass thing.
It is not something that anyone Rick's size, no matter how big he is, should be carrying.
They shoot at him a bunch, and it doesn't do anything, and then he just drops the whole pole on their car.
Immediately killing Mulder with, like, an electrical jolt.
Yeah, which I don't know how that pole is still connected to electricity.
I don't know. Maybe he was generating the electricity. I don't know, man.
But yeah, so then we get Paul kind of like trying to like climb out. He somehow did not get electrocuted.
Right. By the way, this is, if not my first, my second favorite kill of the movie. Is Paul.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. So he's just like, trying to climb out of the car, and Rick just goes over and slams the car door on his head. And his head just flies off.
Right. It's an actual decapitation.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, and so then we cut back to Thomas and the doctor, who have heard about all these murders, and Thomas starts to kind of like put the pieces together, and he's like, all of these people that are dying are connected to George's case in one way or the other.
Right. They either had something to do with Rick or something.
Yeah. And yeah, like it seems like at this point he's starting to think like, okay, Georgia is controlling Rick. Like if people think, or they're seeing a killer who looks kind of like Rick, then there must be a connection there.
Right, because every time she goes through those fits or experiences those seizures, whatever you want to call them, that's when Rick actually starts doing stuff.
Yeah. And so then we cut to Kurt and Eric. They're together, and Kurt is pissed that Eric like gave up his location.
Right. He basically ratted him out, and he's like, "You dumbass."
Yeah. And it turns out that he's right to be mad, because then Rick shows up.
By the way, Rick is the most unstealthy ninja I've ever... Like, he just walks into places and does stuff. Like, he just grabs Eric around the neck. I'm guessing he doesn't kill him because he just kind of tosses him away.
Yeah.
We don't know. Eric may have survived. He may not have. Who knows? But I doubt it. It didn't linger on him like it's lingered on everyone else.
Yeah, that's true. And then we see that Kurt is like literally hiding behind his girlfriend. Like she's standing there and he's like cowering behind her, peeking out from, around her waist. And, Rick grabs him, carries him over to the fireplace, and just shoves his face into the fire.
This is brutal, but well-deserved.
Yeah.
And he doesn't do it just once. Oh, no. He does it a couple times. He makes sure he burns his eyes first.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty intense.
Yeah.
And then, so once Kurt is dead, he starts walking towards the girlfriend, and it's like, wait, why is he going to her? Like, it seems so far he's only killed, he went to that party and he just walked in and killed Hans and then left.
Only people that are related to what happened, right? She would be an innocent victim. Well, it turns out Tom just arrived too, and he distracts Rick by, just saying, hey, Rick, what are you doing?
Yeah, Rick ends up following Thomas as he runs out to his car.
Yeah, he's going to kill Thomas. There's no illusion, like, Rick's pretty much like, I'm going to kill you, motherfucker. He doesn't say it, obviously. But he gives him the look of, I'm going to kill you.
So Thomas calls the hospital, because we're in the 90s, payphones.
Yep.
But yeah, Rick appears and attacks him before he can really get anything out. And so Thomas has to jump back into the car, speed away again.
Right, he just kind of like almost steps into the phone booth with Rick.
Yeah. And like meanwhile, we've got the doctor is with Georgia and he's trying to like sedate her. But then the machine that she's connected to just like zaps him and
he's like, I'm going to have to, I'm going to let you rest. So maybe he's trying to kill her by turning off the machine. So she retaliates, I'm assuming. Yeah.
And so, she somehow passes electricity through the machine into him and kills him. And then we see in Stefan's room, he wakes up and is playing with his ball.
Right. That damn ball. Well, looks like Tom and Rick have both arrived at the hospital. Tom arrived in his car, and Rick is just walking. So he pulled a Jason/Michael Myers and teleported.
Yeah. And like this whole bit's really weird because like I don't know if he's trying to like lose him or what, because like he doesn't just go into the hospital, he goes into like the boiler room of the hospital and is like running around through basements and stuff.
Right, we get the pipe because it's the late 80s, early 90s. We get the pipes with the steam coming off of them. And like Thomas runs past one of the alcoves and Rick just steps out like he almost could have gotten him at that time. It's really weird, man. It's like a music video from the time.
Right. And so I guess at some point, like, Thomas thinks he's, like, lost Rick, so he heads to George's room and tries to wake her up. But then, before she can wake up, Rick arrives and starts choking Thomas. But that ends up waking Georgia up.
Right. And, yeah, she's like, Rick, stop! Apparently she only had such a degree of control over Rick's body.
Yeah, so she's like telling him, not him, he didn't do anything, and Rick won't stop. Like, he keeps going until Stefan walks in, and that distracts Rick.
Right. He's like, hey, Rick!
Yeah.
Pretty much, that's exactly it. And then, yeah, Thomas is kind of a dick here. I'm just going to say that, okay? Because what would your presumably your fiance just woke up from their coma, despite, possibly controlling a corpse.
Right.
But you're like, my first reaction, shut off her life support.
Yeah.
Damn, man. All right.
Which, like, theoretically, if she's awake, she shouldn't even need the life support anyway.
Exactly. But apparently...
he yanks a plug and she immediately just, like, collapses, presumably dead.
Right. And then Rick walks over to her body, lays on it, and technically, I guess, dies right there as well.
Yeah, it seems to be.
Yeah.
And so then, Thomas picks up Stefan and is like, don't worry, it's all over.
We're
safe now.
He said the words.
Yep, so they walk out, and then we see Georgia blink, and her machine start
Turns it
beeping
on.
again.
Yep.
Yep,
Abrupt
so-
ending. Dun, dun,
Yeah.
dun.
Abrupt ending, and like an ending begging for a sequel that never happened.
came. What would that be? Frankenstein 2001. Ah, well, Anthony, we finally got out of here, man. We're finally outside of the Frankenwarp.
Yeah, and since we've had this super high tech, futuristic Frankenstein 2000, it seems like the right time to go into another futuristic Frankenstein adjacent movie.
With some kick-ass dance scenes.
Yeah, so everybody's talking about her. We needed to visit America's sweetheart, Megan.
Yes. So
Yeah,
good.
so next week we'll be talking about Megan, and this will be the first time we've done a movie that is only in theaters. We've done a couple new releases that are like on
Netflix,
streaming.
Yeah.
But since this is only in theaters, it'll probably be kind of a different vibe of an episode. We're not going to be as spoiler heavy, so if you haven't seen it and you're curious and want to hear us talk about it a little bit,
Go watch it.
we'll try to. Yeah, we'll discuss, do some analysis stuff and talk about a little bit of the plot, but not go as in depth into that as we usually do.
Right. So we'll see how that turns out. But Anthony, where can they find us, my man?
So you can, the social media stuff's still messy, but our
Right.
main thing is still Twitter, but you can find us on Instagram and Tumblr and
Reddit.
Hive and Mastodon, and it's all pretty much the Frankencast. Search for us on and Reddit. We got a Reddit too.
Yeah.
And you can always just email us at thefrankencast@gmail.com. And you can always find us at patreon.com/thefrankencast.
Yeah, indeed. All right. Well, we got anything else to say about it?
I think that's it.
All right. Well, in that case, to be continued.
Looks like you survived another episode. The Frankencast is a production of FCR Media. It's hosted by Anthony Bowman and Eric Velasquez. Follow us on Twitter at The Frankencast, or send us a letter at thefrankencast@gmail.com. Our cover art is by Amanda Keller. You can find her at Keller Illustrations on Instagram. Our theme music is by Vivek Abhishek. Thanks for listening.
By the way, I almost feel like we should be like, nice, whenever we release this one.
Yeah.
Episode 69. Nice. Because we're mature. Or I'm not mature at all.
Yeah, I'm not above the funny sex number.
Exactly. The funny sex number.